Before this documentary starts, it's important to understand that hydraulic fracturing is a very well covered subject. Within the past decade, thousands of news articles, hundreds of scientific peer-reviewed journal entries, and many documentaries have been published on fracking and its polarizing tendencies. It's something that many people know about. With a larger argument based around being against fracking, the goal of this documentary is to show something different. In simpler terms, hydraulic fracturing is a method used to draw natural gas from the ground. In order to frack natural gas, a hole is drilled 6,000 to 9,000 feet below the surface into rock development called shale. From there, millions of gallons of water, along with sand and other chemicals, is pumped down at extremely high pressures. This causes the rock to break up, releasing the gas so it floats to the surface. The gas and water is then sucked back to the surface, where it is taken to be processed and used to provide energy for homes and businesses. To understand the future of natural gas, it's important to know the past. This is the timeline for natural gas. It started in the late 1800s. At first, dynamite and nitroglycerin were used to break apart the rock at the surface, but through the decades, better technology was developed. By the 1940s, the natural gas boom was happening, with more efficient horizontal drill shafts and higher pressure pumps providing higher gas yields. The use of natural gas was growing. But like every new technology, the research had not been done on the process, and the effects of natural gas were not known. One thing was known. It was cleaner burning than any other fossil fuel humans had ever discovered. Through the power of gas companies in Congress, more and more laws were passed so that natural gas companies were no longer obstructed by environmental laws, and therefore the natural gas kept coming. In 1987, a law was passed dismissing the gas industry from the Clean Water Act. And then again, in the 1990s, gas drillers were given de facto exemption from the Clean Air Act. This means they did not have to follow it. Leading to the 2000s, the support of natural gas from President Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney, along with President Obama, were further fueling the demand. At this point, fracking was all over the Midwest United States, and the reality of it coming to the East Coast was on the horizon. And then it happened in 2009.
2008, 2009, it came to the Northeast, which is a place with a lot more water and a lot bigger population. And it was really rolled out very quickly in Pennsylvania. And of course, New York and Pennsylvania are two states on top of each other. The line between them is just a line on a map. We share a lot of ecology. We share dairy farms, forests. So there was a real life exposure. I mean, we're only 45 minutes here in the Finger Lakes from the Pennsylvania border. And so it was easy to go down and see what that looked like. And at the same time, very quickly, people there who were on the front lines of fracked communities reported really serious problems, respiratory problems, mysterious rashes, death of companion animals, problems with livestock, and obvious cases of water contamination and air pollution. And they came here to tell to the New York side of the border to tell their stories, and those anecdotes then became the beginning of a scientific inquiry. At the same time, our previous governor, Patterson, in one of his last acts of office, declared a moratorium on fracking based on these emerging signs of trouble that we were seeing in our sister state of Pennsylvania. And that moratorium, which was done by executive order, directed the state of New York to do some investigation of both the public health impacts and the environmental impacts of fracking. And until that study was complete, there would be no fracking in the state of New York. And so thus began this time period up until a statewide ban was declared in December 2014. Thus began a period of deliberation where the scientific community, the medical health community, but also farmers, the faith community, who saw this as an ethical issue, and people at large began to take a look at the troubling signs of harm that were now emerging in other states.
Once fracking was established in Pennsylvania, Anti-fracking groups, biologists, toxicologists, and concerned residents made their way to the scene. They did work to help educate elected officials and residents of affected towns on the possible problems they could be getting themselves into if they leased their land for drilling.
And is it bad? Yes, certainly. The air pollution, there's more and more scientific evidence showing that it certainly increases the amount of methane in the atmosphere, which contributes to global warming. Health impacts are being associated with living near sites that are part of the shale gas development process. And those include increased respiratory problems, problems related to the circulatory system. People with COPD have issues, but also things like birth defects. People who live near these sites who are pregnant, children are showing up with preterm birth problems, low APGAR scores. So something's definitely going on. And we think people should definitely be more concerned. A lot of things that could be done, could be improved. Certainly it could be better regulated. We think that continuous monitoring of pollutants and making that information publicly available would help show how much impact there is. There's also a lot of new technology. There are a lot of old natural gas pipelines that need to be upgraded. There are compressor stations that could be upgraded so that they pollute much, much less. There's an awful lot of leakage and venting and waste along the pipeline that really could be much better controlled.
Finally, in June of 2015, based on a 7-year study done by the Department of Environmental Conservation and the influence of biologists and anti-fracking activists, Governor Cuomo put a ban on fracking in New York for the imminent future. While hundreds of studies have been proven to show the negative aspects of fracking, there are many people who believe the decision made to ban fracking was wrong based on both economic and environmental interests. Based on studies put out by natural gas companies and the comparison of natural gas to its coal and petroleum counterparts, there is an argument to be made. To get to the other side of the fracking story, I was able to interview Dr. Lawrence Castles, who is a professor of Earth and Atmospheric Science at Cornell University.
The suggestion that natural gas could be twice as bad as coal was a shocking thing. Prior to Howarth and Graffia's paper, everybody was thinking of natural gas as a transition fuel. It combusts because it's CH4, so the carbon goes to CO2 and the H goes to water. And so you get about, it puts per unit of heat about half the CO2 into the atmosphere that say coal would. Mm-hmm. And in addition, natural gas has some real advantages with regard to power generation, because you can run basically a gas turbine, sort of a jet engine, and then use the heat from that to run a regular conventional boiler system to generate electricity. And so the energy conversion for the joules in natural gas to electricity is about twice what you can get with coal. Okay. So it has some major advantages. It's relatively low cost. It was seen as a way to handle, at least in a transition way, the periodicity of wind and solar, the real renewables, and it was just better, in other ways for the environment. Much less sort of other things in it than, say, coal or even oil. Okay. And if you compare it to the waste of other alternative forms of energy, it's pretty benign. I mean, you think about disposing of solar panels covering thousands of acres. You think of disposing of windmills when they've decayed. You think of the fly ash and the air effluents related to coal, not much less the coal mining and the damage from acid mine drainage when you expose rock full of pyrite. You're always talking about comparatives, and so comparatively speaking, natural gas has the reputation and should have the reputation of being a very clean, benign form of fuel. I was really surprised that the argument for banning fracking prevailed. I didn't think that was possible because the science was so clear on the other side. The advantages were so clear. Nothing is perfect, but comparatively speaking, it was really the way to go, in my opinion, and would have been a great benefit to rural areas in New York State. To me, it's more a matter of fairness, in a way. It's a big deal for individual landowners. And I could tell you lots of stories, but there are lots of farmers down in Pennsylvania where their economic situation has just changed completely overnight as a result of being able to get lease money and whatnot from the gas recovery. So a lot of the rural people in New York State, like the Landowners Trust, feels that they've been kind of robbed. And they have been, I think. To me, it's quite important to at least show in the scientific realm that we can have sensible discussions and we can get to the bottom in emotional, just pure food fight type ways. And hopefully that'll translate into some of the other challenges that we have. But it's quite serious, and the polarization is quite serious, and the undermining of scientific discussion and exchange is quite serious, and it's both ways. It's not just the evil companies clamping down on people that are trying to raise the flag. It's people that are raising the flag clamping down on anybody that disagrees with them and demeaning them and trying to undercut the discussion or prevent discussion.
So what's the future of natural gas? Depending on where you stand on the subject, it really depends. It's considered the bridge fuel of the energy problem. It's a resource that humans can use to transfer from energy-rich, dirty fossil fuels like coal and oil to clean energy like solar, wind, and hydro. The idea is that natural gas will help fill the lack in energy from renewable resources until the technology can catch up while being more environmentally sustainable by producing fewer CO2 emissions. The problems humans are facing with natural gas is the way it's drawn from the earth. With the environmental impacts it has on the land and our water system and the human health, the question that needs to be asked is it really worth making it the fuel of tomorrow?
A lot of this is about economic independence and energy independence of an area. With resources becoming more and more scarce, especially a rural area like Ithaca, things become very expensive, and it's hard for us to run our businesses as costs of utilities are going up. And therefore, it's really important for us to find those methods of sustainable energy production in order for us to keep economically viable. Because if we start having, with all the increases in costs for supplying energy to businesses and homes, we're going to have to pass that cost on to our member owners and customers through our food prices. So for us, having less expensive sources of energy in our stores, such as solar, where we're more sustainable that way, means we can keep our prices lower for our members and our customers.
Much good news here, I think, which is that all the best science also shows that even with the existing technology we have now, without having to imagine some fairy tale new adaptation to come, but just deploying what we have available to us now in the form of wind, water, and solar power, we can immediately transform our economy and meet all of our needs right now. So I think nobody does doom and gloom like the fossil fuel industry to act like we don't have the innovation to do this. We do. We can do this. And the data are and the science are on our side in making that case. And so what's really needed is the political will. And also, I think, and this is where the power of the faith community comes in, sort of the ethical impulse to realize that if we can save lives, if we can stabilize the climate and so provide a future for our children, then we have a moral obligation to take that step. And that's I think where we're at right now in this moment of history. The fossil fuel industry is not willingly exiting the stage. It's as though fossil fuels are the rotary dial phone. We could all have iPhones, but Rotary insists that they're the trustworthy ones and we should all stick with them, right? And yet that's not what happened. The telecommunications industry is evolving and we all evolve with it.